dig around in your pockets, search between the cushions of your couch, grab whatever quarters you can, and come join us as we count down our top 5 arcade games of all time. Hello and welcome to Mediavania. My name's Marty.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Nick.
And y'all, tonight we are going to count down our top 5 arcade games of all time. Now, I know arcades are kind of passe now, except for, I guess, like, what is it, Dave and
Buster's.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to win a Switch or something like that at Dave and Buster's, or just get tickets for a toy. Arcades are obviously, slowly dying away here anyway.
It's not what they used to be. I'm not here to win tickets. I'm here to play some old school games. And hey, if you like what we're going to be talking about today, make sure to hit that subscribe button, share it, like it. We would really appreciate it. So guys, why wait around? Let's just go ahead and jump into our top 5 arcade games of all time. And it took me a while to come up with this list. Number 4 and 5 are sketchy for me, but I feel pretty good about number 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. A game that came out in 1980. I'm old school. Missile Command. Now, this is a game that probably everybody's seen. You can see it being played right now on the screen. What was so unique about it? It had a trackball. It wasn't buttons. It wasn't joystick. It had a trackball. And I played the mess out of this game, including on the Atari 2600. I played the mess out of there too. But I remember going to the arcade and playing that. Now, was that before y'all's time?
No, Missile Command and Centipede. Those are the 2 trackball games. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely remember seeing them and playing them. The thing with the arcades, just to kind of like with the 80s arcade games like those, I would have been playing arcade games, but I don't think at that point in time were they like really, giving me like core memories or just like how arcades really did impact me growing up yet, right? Like I was playing them and enjoying them, but realistically, when I started playing a lot of arcade games, and we'll get into my list here, and you'll kind of see where I'm going with this. But I would see Tempest or even the older like Pac-Mans and stuff like that. I'd play them, but it was just more for like all these games are cool, but let me play more of this era of arcade games.
All right, well, Matt, let's get into your list. What's your number 5?
Man, my number 5 is a lot of these are going to be 90s games, I think. And the first one was going to be Marvel X-Men. Now, Marvel X-Men, this is the cabinet that had the 4 players all at the same time. I believe One Up Cabinets just recently re-released this game, so you can actually buy like a mini version of the cabinet and play it. But yeah, being able to pick, Wolverine, Cyclops, I believe Colossus was one that you could play as. I'm trying to think of the other ones being a bad memory for being out of the top 5, but I just remember getting with my buddies, us bringing a ton of quarters, throwing them up on the table, and just beating that game, like just playing it through until you finished it, right? And now they did other games in that, like the 4-player side scrollers, but Marvel X-Men is the one that really stood out to me, and I loved it. Did you guys play Marvel X-Men in the arcades?
Oh yeah, that was a great game, but it did not make my top 5.
Yeah, me either. But so I'm curious, Nick, what did make your top 5? What's number 5?
My number 5 is Xavius. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but it's like an old school shooter.
Game. Yes.
There are probably other more iconic shooters out there, but this is the one that I probably spent the most quarters on, so it made my list. It had like a bomb attack, like a special attack. The enemies are really cool, and they kind of like faked some 3D effects with the sprite work, and it has a special place in my heart.
I actually can hear the sounds. I can hear the music and stuff that played in the background as you played in the background. Yeah, very cool. All right, moving on. My number 4, Mario Brothers. And the reason why this is special to me is not necessarily I think it's the best game in the world, but it's very nostalgic in that me and my best friend played the mess out of this game. It was one of the first arcade games where you could actually do co-op together. So my name is Marty. My friend's nickname was Lucky, so he played Luigi. I played Mario all the time.
Sure.
And it was just so much fun to where we had the timings down perfect where you could like jump and meet each other midair and bounce off each other and all this. We had the systems down stuff. So for nostalgia purposes, I absolutely played the mess out of the game just so I could play co-op with my really good friend.
Yeah, that's crazy. So I never played that in the arcade. I played it at home. I played it on like the NES because it came with Super Mario, right? Like it was on that original cart, I believe. But I never played an arcade machine with Mario Brothers on it, so that's really cool.
Yeah, that one just fell off my list. It was really good, but that game and Bubble Bobble, those are like the original like co-op games. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bubble Bobble. I think that's on somebody's runner-up or honorable mention. I'll come
That
back
was
to
not
it in a
one of my honorable
second.
mentions.
Yeah, we'll circle back on our runners up.
That's very
Sure.
nostalgic to me too. Okay, Matt, you're number 4.
My number 4 was Soul Calibur. So this is when we're going to start seeing lots of fighting games in mine because I really grew up in the arcades on fighting games. But Soul Calibur was a newer one, and the one thing that I remember vividly about Soul Calibur is our arcade at the mall had a tournament for Soul Calibur, and they did this like every weekend you would go and play, and if you won your weekend, you would then be invited back to the finals. And I won my weekend, and
Nice.
then got to the final match, and then got like 3rd place in that one. But the 2nd place was my buddy, so like because we just all played together. So like, fighting games in general, just to kind of like put it down, I miss so much, as fun as online fighting games are, being at that arcade cab, putting a quarter on the like 1 quarter to say you're next,
Mhm.
like I'm next,
Yep.
and you just play until you die, like you stay there, and people, you don't even look them in the eye. There was this intense of like they come up and they like, all right, I'm gonna beat you up, and she's like, no, you're not, like I got this down because I play Soul Calibur out. Mitsurugi was my main guy on that, and just loved me some Soul Calibur, man. Taki
yeah,
was really good too.
That fighting game culture, it's unbeatable.
Yep.
Yes.
And it still exists today, very much so.
It does.
Not in the arcade, but online. I've actually gone to. My son wanted to play in like a Street Fighter tournament, and we went down to Orlando to a big event there, and he played there. He didn't
That's
do very
awesome.
well, but there was like 20,000 people there in an arena, and I
Yeah.
sat there in the crowd and watched him play
Oh,
fighting
was that like
games.
an Evo or something?
Evo's in Vegas.
It was like that's
Oh, Evo's Vegas.
yeah, Evo's in Vegas. This is like a mini Evo,
Mhm.
but it was it was like a wrestling match. It was amazing. They actually had a ring set up so the people they actually went in and played against each other. It was such a great experience. So the fighting community, video game fighting community is alive and well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be talking more about video games throughout this video, so like little stories will be popping up. But let's keep going on our list here because I think who's next up on 4?
But yep, my number 4 is Pac-Man. This is one of the great godfathers of video gaming in general, and like such an iconic character.
Mhm.
The reason I included this is my dad's favorite. Like my dad, I wouldn't call him a gamer. Like he wasn't a gamer, but like he would just sit there and play Pac-Man while my brother and I were off in the arcade playing other games.
That's awesome.
So where does Miss Pac-Man rank for you?
Miss Pac-Man's up there too. Like Miss Pac-Man's got the cutscenes, right?
Yeah,
Miss Pac-Man's
so-
probably the best game of that original bunch. But Pac-Man, that's the classic. That's why
I definitely played more Miss Pac-Man than Pac-Man for sure. A lot of this is going to come down to the fact that my dad had an arcade when I was growing up. So, and I have to, and this is where a lot of the fighting game stuff came in, and this is where a lot of stories are going to come into play a little later in the video. But he had Miss Pac-Man, so I played a lot of Miss Pac-Man.
My number 3 is actually Matt's number 2, so we're going to skip it and go straight to Matt's number 3.
Oh man, right to number 3. So let's keep these fighting games rolling and go to Mortal Kombat 3. Mortal Kombat 3 is something that, like, in my dad's arcade, so he had a newsstand, and in the back of the newsstand he had an arcade, but he had it set up where these were like real deal arcade games coming in, and he would always have the newest stuff. And he had Mortal Kombat 3. Actually, I think it might have been Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and he would close down shop to do paperwork, and he would do his books, and he'd just put everything on free play. And I would go in and just get all the practice in the world. Like I'd go and play. And Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, I remember, playing those characters, learning Sub-Zero, learning Scorpion, all the fighters. And I think Mortal Kombat 3 was the one that really fell into being super good, really tight. Mortal Kombat 2 was good, huge improvement off of 1, but it wasn't until 3 that they added like the run button. I don't think the run button was in 2. Don't give me run button was in 3, and that's when you start getting the combos, and they really started to try to speed up the gameplay quite a bit. So yeah, Mortal Kombat 3 is that for me. How about number 3 for
My 3 is the same as Marty's 3 and your 2, so I think we should talk about it, right?
Well,
So,
we'll just wait till we'll wait till Matt's
all
number
right,
2.
all right, all right. So we'll keep it a mystery. All right.
We'll come back. We'll come
Because-
back to it. Everyone's 3. We don't. We all want to talk about one game together that all lands at the same time.
Which
So
will be
let's keep-
right after this one, because my number 2 is Robotron, a twin stick shooter. Probably one of the originals that came out. And this was one of those games that this was probably the arcade game I was best at.
Mhm.
And even to this day, I still have some moves, because there is a convention down in Atlanta called the Southern Fried Gaming Expo, where it's over the weekend of the summer, and people bring in a bunch of old arcade games, and it's free to play all weekend long. And every day I will go in there and make sure I get in the top 10 in Robotron. Robotron is just one of those, for some reason, I get into a zone. Like, I do things when I'm in that game I can't believe that I'm actually pulling off. Like, there's no, well, it's one of those things, there's no way
Hand-eye coordination.
yeah,
is
it's like there's
clutch.
no way
Muscle memory.
I should have been able to do that. And as soon as I realize I did something amazing, I die. So I come out of the zone at that point. But Robotron is a very special place in my heart. It's one of those I spent many quarters on, and I still love to this day the adrenaline that it pulls up in me, especially when it gets to the 100 grunt screen, when there's 100 grunt. And I have a pattern. Every time I play, there's a certain pattern. I try to work my way through the grunts, a spiral pattern to clear out the board. So
I feel like we got to get Marty down to Twin Galaxies and see if he can get a high score or something.
Oh, I'm not that good. It's just one of those things. That's one of those games that I can still kind of play.
Have you guys seen King of Kong?
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah. What a great documentary! And if anyone here hasn't seen it, I recommend watching King of Kong. It's the fight over the Donkey Kong high score.
Yeah.
I think there's some behind the scene dramas there too.
There is.
For sure. And that's it's like still going on. Like, those guys are still like at it. But,
Billy, whatever his name is.
Billy Mitchell.
Billy Mitchell. Yeah, with still got the dread, not the
He's
dread,
something
like,
else.
The mullet.
But like you said, Marty, with Robotron, it's all of those older games are they're so skill based as far as like muscle memory, hand-eye coordination, and like how long you can endure to stay on a machine until you get like the infamous kill screen or like whatever your high score is.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like, because they're not long. They're just hard. Like, they made games. These games were harder back then. They weren't longer. Now they're longer because they're easier. Yeah, exactly. They just wanted your quarters.
That's true. And that was the idea behind it. Speaking of which, Matt, your number 2 is our number 3s. You're talking about soaking up some quarters.
Mm-hmm.
Is it time?
It's time.
Okay, this is where. Okay, so here's the thing. This is one of my favorite games of all time. And this game is Dragon's Lair. Okay, Dragon's Lair, the Dragon's Lair arcade cabinet is honestly something that I wish to have one day. Like, if I ever did get an arcade cabinet, it would be Dragon's Lair. And the reason that I want a Dragon's Lair cabinet is because the arcade version is the best version of the game, because of how fast the inputs are. And if you don't know about Dragon's Lair, basically Dragon's Lair is an animated arcade title that just plays a story, and you only have up, down, left, and right, and a sword button. Those are your actions. That's all you can do. So at certain times during the animation, you have to choose to hit left, right, up, down, or sword. And it comes down to memorization. Like, that's all it is. This isn't really like a skill game. You're memorizing the patterns and what he does to get through. But the animation was so good. This was, Nick, correct me, Steve Bluth.
Don Bluth.
Don Bluth, my bad, Steve. Don Bluth, Animation Studios, who has done so much stuff in that time, in that era. He did like The Land Before Time, some other things too. Secret of Nim, yeah. And he did this. He also did Space Ace, which was good, but it's not Dragon's Lair, right? Like, and yeah, tell me a little bit about. So Dragon's Lair was in my dad's arcade, and this is another one so I could beat it. Like, that was the thing. I at one point in time I could like close my eyes and beat Dragon's Lair because I just knew every single hit, every level, every screen. Scenario that he got. I mean, right now he's on the horse going back and forth between like the things, or in the barrel down the river. Tell me your guys' story about Dragon's Lair and why it was on your list.
Nick,
it caught my eye just because of the Don Bluth animation. I'm like, that looks kind of Disney, like, because he worked for Disney and then he had his own style, right? So I mean, you come in and it looks unlike anything else you've ever seen because everything else in the arcade looks like Robotron, right? Like, it's old school graphics, and then you have this beautiful hand-drawn animation, and just like, wow, that pulls you in. And especially the father of the QuickTime event. You mentioned like how fast inputs are. If you're responding to the prompts on the screen, you're already dead. You're gonna get that death animation. Like you have to know like ahead
You
of
kind
time.
of got to know it's
Like
coming.
early
They
on,
had
were
the
like
little
difference.
blinks. Like
Yeah.
there was like the blink that like telegraphed it just a little bit ahead of time, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that gave you an idea of what you were supposed to do, but it didn't tell you if you should hit
Yeah.
or move. It was just like, hey, something's going on here, right?
Right.
Like, and I
And
can hear the sound.
some of those were impulsively like late or buggy, right? And sometimes they would
Yeah.
flip it, right? It'd be the same screen but flipped.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
you couldn't just know exactly how everything was going to go all the time. So I mean, it was just such an important game, and quick time events in action games now kind of
Come from that.
all
Absolutely.
call from a Dragon Slayer. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Marty?
And what was really interesting is, telling me I had to memorize everything. It's interesting how some of the screens timing didn't matter. You could just like right, click, and then it would
True.
take it. And then some of them timing did matter. You had to wait until the right time. And the screen that always got me was the Black Knight. Man, me having to learn the Black Knight pattern. And you know, our arcade machine was set up to where you had to beat them all the screens and then do everything in mirror mode before you got to the dragon.
Yep.
And so that Black Knight, you had to recognize which side was he holding the sword on, so you know which way to start the pattern.
Yeah.
But here's my big story. So Nick, did you beat the game? I assume you did, right?
But yes, eventually after mini quarters.
Yes. So same here. And this is also, I think, the first game that cost like 50 cents to play. So it was really expensive.
Yeah, expensive to get through.
So at my arcade, we played at what used to be putt-putts. There used to be all around the country. It was a putt-putt course and it had arcades. And I was determined to learn how to beat the dragon. So I'd watch other people play when they got to the dragon. And here's what I did. This card is from 1983. I sat there and wrote down while somebody played. I'll have this on the screen. I'll take a screenshot. You're seeing it right now. I wrote down all the inputs the person made and then translated on the back. So to beat the dragon is left, back, forward, right, forward, sword, forward, sword. And then I got at the very bottom of the card, dead mother. And so basically I sat there and watched people play, and I took notes and went home and memorized it, and then went back to the arcade. And this was one of the biggest accomplishments for me ever in video games, was finally beating the dragon.
Oh my god, that's such a good story. Marty, do you know how many notepads I have of Mortal Kombat finishing moves? Same thing, just those pages with all the and I would bring that to the arcade with me and you know, be like, well, at least I can do the finishing move for Sub-Zero or whatever, right?
You mean before the times when you could just go on the internet and go, what's the finishing move for X?
Exactly.
The first kid who got the strategy guide had like the complete competitive advantage in any game.
That's true.
So, you know, again, kind of coming back on the arcade machine of Dragon's Lair, again, it had the best inputs. Dragon's Lair has been on just about every system since. You can get Dragon's Lair on anything right now. And the best version that I've recently found was this one, which is Dragon's Lair Physical on the Switch. Now, this is actually by Limited Run Games. They don't make this. I got this at a convention, and this is the Dragon's Lair trilogy, and it has Dragon's Lair Space Ace and Dragon's Lair 2 Time Warp. It's all of them on one cart, and it's very fast. It's super quick because it's a cartridge. It's not a disc. I remember Dragon's Lair on like 360 or Xbox One, maybe even PS1. And every time you hit an input, it had to read the disc to check the next part, and it was just off. Like it never felt good. And I'm like, man, I know the arcade one felt like super good, because I think at the time it went off of a laser disc. If I'm not crazy, like it was like a laser disc or some kind of, and that was super snappy. And for a while, I was like, well, I'll get a laser disc player and a laser disc version of Dragon's Lair. But I always just wanted a really, really good version, and the Switch version is actually pretty good. I think you can download it on that to have it not physical, but I got the physical one, and I'm holding on to this one forever. So this is
cool.
Dragon's Lair.
So that's the one game that all of us put on our list.
We all, we
really
all share
cool.
that one.
All right, Nick, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original one. This is where I fell in love with the side scroller. Like there are other 4-player games like Rampage, right, and The Simpsons, like honorable mention, but TMNT was like the ultimate one for me, and I had like a real bad Turtles phase, like in the 80s and 90s. Like I grew up reading the Mirage comics, and I got into like the more kid-friendly like Nickelodeon series. But so I mean, this is a game that really spoke to me as clear mechanics. All the turtles were different. Like it wasn't just 4 clones of the exact same fighter. and the series just got progressively better. Like TMNT 3, like Turtles in Time, is probably the best of the game of the series, but the original one was great.
Yeah.
The art was great, the sprites are amazing, and it really wanted your quarters. That last boss Shredder, like, can just one shot you from full health.
Yeah, so it's
That's
like
just
put in
Yeah,
another quarter.
oh, okay, I guess it just died.
Now,
Oh,
do you know that they just did a new one of those? Like,
Yes,
we
is it
have it in our.
.mu, right? Yeah,
What's that?
is it .mu, that company?
I'm not sure the company that makes it, but I mean, it's in my arcade. It's got all new graphics,
Hmm.
new story. You know, it's the 4 players, a whole new cabinet, and my son and I play it, and it's really cool because we can jump up to that, and he can pick one of the different turtles, and we just kind of play as long as we can. So it's neat that that model is still really popular. You know, for them to like come out with a whole new cabinet in a game.
well, they're coming out with a whole new Switch version of the game, right? So I mean, it's supposed to be
They
next
are,
year.
yeah. I want. It
Yeah.
looks really good. I want it, and that actually looks more like the old ones because they're doing the old sprite animation.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll have to all get on there and play that together.
yeah,
Because maybe we'll like
that'd be
do
fun.
some stream and play that together.
Oh, that'd be cool. All right, so gentlemen, we're down to our number one, and my number one is one of those that if I was to buy a cabinet, this is the one I would want. It just so happens this happens to be one of the hardest, most expensive cabinets to get
Hmm.
from 1981, Tempest. So when this game came out, everything was very much 2D, side scrolly sort of thing. This introduced vector graphics, where the
Hmm.
idea was the way it was drawn on the screen, it almost looked 3D-ish. You're at the
Yep.
top of a geometric shape. You have a shooter shooting what looks like you're shooting down tubes as things come at you. It has the spinner, which I thought was unique for the time as something a new control system. So it was a spinner,
Hmm.
2 buttons. This was my second best game I was ever able to be good at. And in fact, at Southern Fried Gaming Expo, which I go every year, there's always at least one Tempest cabinet, and I will
Cool.
play. I'll sit there and play forever because that's one of those games that you can, when you die, you can restart it like a couple levels before where you died, so you can just kind of continue.
Hmm.
And so I was just addicted to this game. It was one of those that it was again, it was muscle memory. It was a lot of Twitch stuff going on. It was I don't know. It was one of those things where I got to the point to where when I was a kid, I could spin the spinner and stop it, like literally just right on the right spot on the grid where I exactly wanted to stop. It was that sort of
Yeah.
control. And again, love that game. And like I said, I would love to have a cabinet of it,
Hmm.
except it's hard to find because that vector graphics screen is very hard to maintain and it's hard to
Yeah.
find it in working condition.
Tempest is super great,
Yeah.
and anytime I see that I will play that game in an arcade. It is still so fun, and they came out with some new ones as well. Tempest like 3000
Mm-hmm.
and like some more modern
There's,
Tempest, which
there's one of the Atari Lynx, right? There was a cool version of Tempest on
oh,
that.
the Atari Lynx.
Yeah,
Yeah, there
I
was
gotta
one
have
that
this.
One,
had
one
It
of my
needs a
buddies
spinner
had it.
though.
Like, we all went over to his house.
uh-huh.
If without the spinner, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna play with the
Yeah.
joystick. It just ain't the same. Ain't the same.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Matt, you're number one.
My number one. Okay, so my number one shapes a lot of who I am as like a gamer
Wow.
today. And if if any of the fighting games didn't like start to give this off, my number one is going to be Street Fighter 2. And I have Championship Edition down as my Ryu's my guy, by the way. I will play Ryu all the time. I don't care who gives me any amount of shit for it. Ryu's my guy. So yeah, I put Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition. Again, coming back to my dad's arcade. Championship Edition is one of the first cabinets that he had. I played the Street Fighter 2 cabinet out and about, but it wasn't until he got the Championship Edition one in that I really sank my teeth into it. Got really good at characters, played all the different characters. Love that they introduced the bosses. And listen, Street Fighter 2 is why fighting games are as popular as they are today. There's so much like Evo is as popular as it is because of Street Fighter, right? Like in I've played every single Street Fighter that's come out since. Like this is what started it, and this is why I love fighting games. This is why I love arcade games. Again, the competition of two people like coming together and playing, watching Evo and watching people compete on such a high level. If you haven't seen the Daigo video from Evo,
Yeah.
where it was
The
Street
moment.
Fighter 3 Third Strike that they were playing, and he was playing Justin Wong, and Daigo was Ken, and Justin Wong was Chun-Li, and it's just the best comeback video of all time. Ultra little extra fun fact here. the person that shot that video, his name is Seth Killian. Seth Killian is a huge person just in the fighting game world, to the point where Street Fighter named the Street Fighter 4 boss after him. Seth is actually named after Seth Killian. I played Seth Killian in a fighting game before. He was at a conference. It's the most obscure fighting game. It was actually the Capcom versus Tetsunoku for like Wii, when they put all those characters together, right? Like he was just there, like in the booth, and he was playing, right? So Seth Killian's there playing, and I'm like, oh my god, that's Seth Killian. Being such a big fighting game fan, I was like, I was like, hey, can I play? And he's like, oh yeah, sure, here, you can play. And he got off of it, and I was like, can I play you? Like, I just want to play you really bad. And he's like, sure. And he destroyed me, like completely destroyed. And I was like, I was like, thank you for beating me. Like, so goodness. And it was just a great little moment. But I'll play every Street Fighter that comes out forever. The newest one is fantastic, 5. And yeah, I mean, waiting see if they ever do a 6. But
Nick might as well jump in on this because your number one is...
My number one is the same. It's also Street Fighter 2.
Let's talk more about Street Fighter.
But I put the original one because that's the one that my brother and I got into the most. But we actually had a TurboGrafx 16 growing up, and it was Fighting Street for the first one. But if you've ever played that, you know it's kind of janky. So the evolution from the first one to the second Street Fighter, where the controls just tighten up, the special moves are consistent, easy to do, easily reproducible. It's just the next step, and it was just... To me, it's still the perfect fighting game. Like, I can still go back and play it.
Of course.
And my brother and I had like a rivalry because we're only a couple years apart. He and I was always just slightly better than he was. So he grew up thinking he was bad at fighting games. But then when he would play like other people, because we spent like all our waking hours like playing Street Fighter 2, he would just crush everybody else. Like he went to an arcade for like an hour on like one quarter and just stayed there because nobody could knock him off the hill.
And that's great. It's such a fun feeling.
But he's like, hey, did you know I'm actually also really good at fighting games? So yeah, I have a lot of great memories with Street Fighter.
Do y'all still play fighting games today on the consoles?
Some,
absolutely.
But not to the same extent.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, like part of fighting games is the arcade, right? Like for me growing up, it's what I've already mentioned. It's the going into an arcade, throwing in a couple quarters, and hoping someone walks up and fights you and you see how good you are. Then go back and forth. Now I do that online. I've played all the Street Fighters online. You know what one I got into quite a bit was on the 360 Street Fighter. Came out with an Ultra HD version. It was Super Street Fighter Ultra, and they cleaned up the graphics. It was just like it was still 2D, but the super crisp graphics. And I played that a lot online, and then kind of have played every other iteration that they've offered online. I feel like online's finally really good. Like I can go online right now and play Street Fighter 5 and get a few matches in and be pretty satisfied, but it's just not the same. Like it's not the same. They do have these lobbies that you can create where if like say the three of us wanted to go play Street Fighter together, we all get in a lobby and we can watch two of us play, and the winner will just kind of keep bumping in. It kind of gives you that arcade feeling, so someone's watching, but fighting games are fun to watch. I mean, watch Evo. I'm telling you, it's like great. But enough about Street Fighter for just a minute, because we're going to talk more about fighting games here in our runner-ups. Marty, what's your number one game of all time? Your number one arcade game? Oh, wait, you said
I've already done it. Yeah, we've already gone through the list. So we
talked about Street Fighter so much that I forgot we were number ones. We have runner-ups.
Yeah, let's just talk about some stuff that maybe didn't make our list. For me, it was a lot of them have to do with the other ones that were on my list. For example, I had Gauntlet, because I like the co-op game, the 4-player co-op, which I still know. Centipede, because I had the trackball. Enjoyed that game. Smash TV, again, dual stick shooter there. Track and Field. I don't know if y'all remember that. Was basically an old 2-button game, and it was one of those things. I had a technique where I could rake the buttons with 4 fingers each. It was like, and I could just like it was. A lot of people did this like they're
out of context. That's gonna be a great clip.
Yeah. Really fast, and so so those are, and Dig Dug. I was also a big Dig Dug fan, and I'll come back to another game that's on Nick's honorable mentions. Nick, what's yours?
All right, so a lot of games we touched on already, but Mortal Kombat 3, Rampage, 4-player action, Final Fight, The Simpsons. Simpsons included team-up attacks, which were unique between the characters, which was awesome. Dig Dug, we talked about Bubble Bobble already. Marty, you talked about Mario Brothers. Centipede, Smash TV, and NBA Jam.
So it's funny on Bubble Bobble. I didn't play a lot in the arcade, but my roommate had it on the Commodore 64,
Hmm.
and that's where I played. So I played on the Commodore 64, and we played co-op, and we could beat all 100 levels. So that
Nice.
was that was one of those things we'd sit there and just play hours till we could beat the whole game. So good memories with that one too.
I had a couple buzzer beaters coming in for my runners up. I kept thinking of games as they're not on my list for runners up, and I'm gonna put those down first because one is Root Beer Tapper.
Oh, I
Um,
love that
Yeah.
Root Beer
game.
Tapper is like so good, and that's one
So
that I can play
good.
anytime I see it. So Root Beer Tapper, I think if one of the like the '80s classic ones would make it on my list, it'd be Root Beer Tapper.
Yeah.
And Golden Tea. Golden Tea, you could play Golden Tea at any bar. Like we would
Mhm.
go out to bars and they'd have Golden Tea, and I'd play Golden Tea until I couldn't see straight anymore. Like the again trackball, perfect trackball usage. They have Golden Tea machines that you can buy for your house now. And they're like, hopefully, I don't know if the ball, but it's gonna be if that ball works well, right? Like it all comes down to the feel of that ball.
Mhm.
And then my my actual shout out list, and I'll go relatively quick here. Time Crisis, like any Time Crisis game. Virtual Fighter 2, more
Of
fighting
course.
games. Daytona USA is one of the best racing games in arcades. It was like the first really good 3D racing game that was fast. I had that first course memorized. I knew every turn. Like I played tons of Daytona USA. Killer Instinct,
Yeah.
Smash TV.
Mhm.
Smash TV had another one too that was not Smash TV.
I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah. What was this? Well, not the Smash, but it was like in the jungle. I think there was like they did a couple of the Smash TV versions. I want Akari Warriors is coming to my head, but that's just like an old NES game.
Yeah,
Akari Warriors may have been in the arcade, but
It was, yeah.
yeah. Tekken 3, more Samurai Showdown, like any of the Neo Geo line of games. Like I'd play all those. Like Fatal Fury, I think we didn't really mention Fatal Fury.
Go was like Mark of the Wolves was like the pinnacle of that.
Yeah, dude. And Nick mentioned really quickly was NBA Jam. I mean, I played so much NBA Jam. It's so fun, and that made it to consoles and stuff. And when we started coming home and playing more games, I have a very vivid memory too of Street Fighter. I liked it so much I wanted to play at home. And when it came out to the Super Nintendo, I used to rent. You could rent consoles back in the day, and I would rent like the console for the weekend and get Street Fighter, and then we would play Street Fighter at home. Again, though, still not as awesome as being in the arcades. And anytime I see, do you guys still go to arcades? Like, if you see an arcade, do you go just kind of check it out? Like, do you walk around and check it out?
I
Because
used to
100%.
until it's what y'all we said at the very beginning of the episode. It's nothing but like the pincher things trying to grab stuff. It's luck based stuff winning tickets. It's not real arcade, or it's the light guns. The
Yeah, a lot of light
type
gun stuff,
cabinets. A lot of light guns. It's not the classic stuff.
Yeah, it's too bad. And but I mean, I believe they're still pretty popular in Japan, like with Street Fighter machines and fighting game machines. But
And
those
rhythm
have been
games.
almost in rhythm games.
Oh yeah,
those
like dancing
too.
game, like
Yeah.
DDR
Yeah, we
stuff.
did. None of us. I guess apparently none of us played DDR. Huh? We're not.
I did.
No
Not
way
for
I
long.
could play that.
I didn't know if putting air hockey was gonna work either. Like I love playing me some air hockey, but no, I didn't really get into DDR actually. I do love music rhythm games. But I didn't want to come out of the arcade like sweating in that way, like that. I just like worked out. But I have seen some great videos of people playing DDR and like how good they are. Is like they do two players back and
Oh
forth.
yeah, those are the crazy ones. Yeah.
I tell you what, this has been fun going down memory lane with you guys. I miss the arcade, man. I do. I know you dropped a lot of quarters. I know it's a lot easier to play games at home now and stuff. But like you were saying, Matt, there's just something about the arcade, about running into a stranger and it's like just going toe to toe on your favorite fighting game or something, or just watching other people play and trying to learn from them. It's just it's days gone by that I still just have fond memories of.
Yeah.
I still have lifelong friends that I've met in the arcade.
I was gonna say like the crowds, right? You mentioned like when you're fighting the boss, the dragon in Dragon's Lair, or you're on the Shredder on Ninja Turtles, and like there's like the buzz, right? People are like, hey, they're in the last boss, and like the little crowd.
Totally, yeah. That stuff doesn't happen anymore, right? Like you beat a game and then you go tell your friends on Facebook or whatever. It's like, hey, I finished. I got credits rolling on God of War. Like, how sweet was that? Like,
and then somebody says, "Yeah, I finished that the day it came out, dude. What's going on with you?"
But no, and even like on the old '80s ones, like when people would get ready to get like a super high score, like everyone would crowd around and watch this high score, because there was a spectacle of it, man. And that's why I still enjoy watching Evo today. I think it would be cool to go to Evo in person, but just at least watching it on TV, knowing that competition is still alive and well. Like I don't get into all the games that Evo shows, but I definitely watch Street Fighter every year, and it's good to see some of the classic names that I used to know still playing, but all the new guys that are coming through.
One of my kids is a huge Street Fighter fighting game fan, and we want to go to Evo one year. We thought about going this upcoming year, but we'll just have to see how the schedule is. But one year we're actually going to go to Evo in Vegas and do that. So
it would be fun to be there for it, because again, with all the cheering, especially in the finals, you get to the finals, you get to people you're rooting for, and just seeing it all, because some of those matches come down to the last little sliver of health. And again, I'm going to remind people to go watch Daigo versus Justin Wong Evo Finals. I do not remember the year, but it'll be the first. If you put Daigo, and Daigo is Daigo, so just search that, and you'll find like some of the coolest videos. He's the reason I play, like one of the main reasons I continue to main Ryu too.
Hey, so if you've watched this, we want to know what you think. Give us your top 5. Let us know your top 5 coin-op arcade games. Put them down in the comments below. We would love to hear what you like. Are you from the 80s? You from the 90s? What style of game do you like? You a fighter like Matt? You old school like me? Just let us know in the comments. And if you want to, please subscribe and like this video, share it. Guys, that was a lot of fun. I can't wait to do more lists with you guys. I thought it was fun just to be our first one to be like old school arcade games. And we'll just continue to consoles and PCs and genres of games. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, throw if comments to see what else you want us to tell, top 5. We'll do a list on anything, but arcades is a great place to start, Marty.
There you go. All right, everybody. Thanks for checking us out.